A soft thump woke Professor Nancy Russell. She nodded off in her office again, grading Lit 101 essays. Blindly, she turned on her desk lamp and was surprised to find a book lying before her. A dictionary of forgotten words. It was from her shelf, an old gift from Professor Gordon in astrophysics, but now with a note protruding like a bookmark. Confused, she opened the book and began reading Gordon's sloppy handwriting. Nancy, you were right. My experiment was too dangerous. But here's what all your cautionary science fiction books missed. When you stop time, you stop light. I accelerated myself so fast that normal time appeared to stop, but the darkness made me think I'd failed. Then I moved my head and understood. In order to see, I'd have to keep moving so that light would hit my retinas. It's a weird, strobing sensation. The trouble is, when I stop, Nancy, you have to warn everyone. You've heard of dark matter. Only about 4% of the universe is normal matter, and the rest is so-called dark matter and dark energy. No one knows what those are. But now I've learned there are things in the dark. Hideous things, and fast, because wherever light goes, darkness is already there. And just like we've been curious about that invisible 96%, they've been wondering about our 4%. Now I'm here. Now they know about us. Shit, got to keep moving their Nancy's eyes flicked down to the open dictionary, where a definition had been hastily circled. Ghoom. To hunt in the dark. Then she gasped as the bulb in her desk lamp popped.
Something is wrong. Consciousness drifts back to me lazily, like an incoming tide as my mind and body awake in stages. At first it is dark, and I have no form, just a terrified animal spark suspended in a featureless abyss. My primal hindbrain sends useless impulses to my unanswering body, demanding that I run and hide, but I am still. How long I drift here, I do not know, and the darkness devours time. Gradually I become aware of muted sensory impressions, the faint hiss of venting gas, the dry taste of recycled air. It is utterly black, however, darker than I would have believed possible, and I slowly realize that my eyelids refuse to open. I am aware of them now, thin sheets of flesh that tug across my face but remain closed despite my efforts. Even without them, I can still sense the glass and metal frame around them. With a dawning wave, I realize how cold I am, so cold that for a hideous protracted moment I believe I may be on fire. I begin to panic, still trapped inside my nearly lifeless body, wanting to slither and crawl away from the pain. My lips part with a tear of flesh, and I can feel blood trickling into my mouth, growing instantly cool as it runs between my clenched teeth. My jaw remains in place, the muscles straining weakly beneath my cheeks. I want to cry, to sob like a child, bathed in quiet despair and helplessness. In my cocoon of self-pity, higher functions of my mind begin to slowly emerge, grinding like rusty gears into use, and I try to calm myself. I am alive, I tell myself. This is all perfectly normal, and at any moment one of the ship's medics will carefully open the capsule, place the tip of a plastic bulb between my torn lips, and squeeze warm, sweet electrolytes down my parched throat. This maternal image of comfort stills my quivering body, and I begin to breathe regularly, and my reason begins to return. If I am awake, then we have arrived. The long, silent passage through the endless night of interstellar space has ended. If I am alive, then we are in orbit around Eta Cassiopeia. I breathe evenly and smooth and catch a tinge of something in the air, a faint whiff of chemical corruption from the dry sterility of the ventilation. The blackness beyond my closed eyes pulses briefly with light, registering a soft red glow as it diffuses through the vessels and capillaries of my closed lips. My cracked lips emit little white sparks of pain as I contort my face, tugging my eyelids open with a quick and agonizing jerk of the head. Fluid weeps from the corners as I blink convulsively. At first I am terrified that I am blind, and then, slowly, the edges of my tiny capsule revolve in the faint red light of a blinking LED. The glass is just a few inches from my face, and I can see my breath against it, a wet fog that briefly flowers into ice and quickly evaporates into the dry air. Beyond the glass is nothing, a silent and yawning darkness. My heart is thudding in my chest now, and my limbs seem to twitch and tug on the safety restraints around my ankles and wrists. The tight glass coffin and the empty abyss beyond seem to crush me between them, twining threads of claustrophobia and agoraphobia around my chest, and I struggle to breathe evenly. The lights should be on. Someone should be here by now. Something is very wrong. Faint movement at the periphery of my eyes cause me to turn my head and eyes in a sharp, instinctual move. The weary, atrophied muscles of my neck scream in agony, and my eyes grind through sandpaper-filled sockets. I gasp, and my eyes fill with warm, welcome tears that without gravity simply cloud my eyes like a lens. Through the watery haze, I see a passing wave of dull, red light, illuminating briefly the dimensions of the space in the dark, and then drifting out of sight. I shake my head, grinding my teeth against the dry, tearing pain of movement, and fling the tears from my eyes. They drift away in little silver spheres and freeze moments later. I blink my eyelids and try to focus again on the darkness. I barely realize that I have stopped breathing when the light returns. It is red emergency light, spinning silently, but it is far too dim and far too slow. It crosses the room like a broom, briefly revealing the faintest glimpse of the space beyond. I see rows of dark containers, dozens of them, each containing the vague shadow of a figure. My eyes dart around the scene, unable to absorb any details, only the vague sense of scale and shape inside the room. I strain my eyes to focus each time the light passes, but I can't make out anything in the dimming light. There is nothing in the darkness that can tell me what has gone wrong. I didn't see the window at first, but I gradually became aware of it as faint pinpricks of starlight catch my eye. I lock my eyes and focus on the drifting stars as my heart threatens to burst from my chest and my lungs suck in frigid air in ragged gasps. Calm, I repeat, over and over like a mantra to myself. Calm. If I can just get control of my breathing and be patient, someone will come to help. Like an answer, there is an explosion of light from behind the window. I squint, feeling my irises spasm and struggle to contract. Outside the porthole, there is a blue and cloudy world, looming and massive. My eyes adjust, and I can do nothing but drink in the sight of the oceans and land. The planet's light seeps into the cabin and illuminates the rows of glass and steel tubes, and I can finally make out the occupants. Most of them are frozen and dead, pale blue and white wraiths with lips and eyelids pulled wide and open by contracting muscles. A few of the containers are smeared red and opaque. Each has the same flower of frozen blood and cracks where its occupant must have beat its skull against the glass. I tug again on my restraints as panic overwhelms me, my limbs thrashing against the restraints. I realize I am silently asking for God, begging escape from this frozen mausoleum. My eyes lock onto the planet, now wide and filling the window, and my heart stops. In the blue ocean, I see the distinct silhouette of the European coast. My mind reels, and I clench my eyes against the disorientation. We never left. The fever of panic breaks, and I begin to feel a glimmer of hope. I am not going to die in orbit around an alien world. I am home. I can still be saved. These thoughts start to warm me, and I stop tugging against the straps. Measured breath returns, and I close my puffy, swollen eyes and allow my heart to settle. I open my eyes again, gazing down onto the earth, and a sudden wave of nausea rises in me before I really understand what I have just seen. Striking a sharp line across the face of the globe, the terminus between night and day divides Europe and Africa. On the day side, I see the polar ice, a stretching white sheet that has all but absorbed the Scandinavian peninsula and coils around the rest of the continent. On the night side, there is a primal and elemental darkness. There are no cities, no lights. There is but emptiness. As quick as it came, the earth slides out of view, showing only her frigid and lightless night and dropping the cabin into a final cold darkness. The red klaxon light has stopped spinning. The lights inside my coffin have stopped blinking. I am left alone in the frozen dark with the dead. Terror claws at me. My body is shuddering and useless, with blood like ice. I suck in a deep lungful of dying air and scream.
I think this might be the end. For us, anyway. Man, and all that we've accomplished. I've had plenty of time to think about it the last time I saw the sun. The last time I'd ever see it. It's not the end of the world, but it is for us. I guess it started almost a month ago, although it could be longer. There's only the clocks scattered around the house to tell me how long, and half of those are dead now. Anyway, I'm straying from the point. It was on the news. A cruise ship sank for no reason. It wasn't even damaged, just pulled straight down into the crushing black abyss. Then the rest of the stories flooded in. Everything in the water was sinking. Oil rigs disappeared. People on the beach pulled down into the abyss. Nobody seemed able to explain why this was happening. Nothing floated anymore. It was bizarre. It was almost like water had lost its buoyancy. This all filled the news for a couple of days, until it just got frightening. It was during one broadcast that it changed for the worse. It was a report from some beach, an on-location reporter about this strange phenomenon. They were just recycling the same questions we had all been asking for days. Suddenly, panic seemed to grip the face of the reporter. She screamed as the camera quickly tilted down. Her feet were sunk into the sand, down to her shins. I remember smirking, thinking it was just some overly sensitive reporter messing up. But then the camera dropped. The remaining 10 or so seconds that followed showed not just the reporter sinking into the sand, but all of them. The whole media circus that had descended onto the beach to cover the same story. The reporter who was sinking down to her shin a minute ago was now down to her chest. The shot of writhing, screaming, sinking people ended shortly as the camera was engulfed by sand. The news stayed on for a few more days, but there was nothing to say, nothing for them to add. Some blamed the sinkholes for what happened on the beach, while others argued against them from the safety of their downtown studio. The news was a waste of time now. It was just so much easier to look out one's window. Soon it was more or less a ghost town outside. Everyone was inside, afraid to leave their homes. It didn't seem to make sense. The roads and pavements were being absorbed by grass and dirt. Street signs and traffic signs were being consumed by the plants. Houses, too. Some people tried to run, jumping from rooftop to rooftop, looking for higher ground. Occasionally, while flicking through what was left of the TV broadcast, skyscrapers had become refugee camps. I made one trip out of the house since this started, all across the rooftops. An attempt to get supplies from a nearby supermarket, but that plan seemed to be a waste of time. It was a husk by the time I got there, looted and pillaged. There was all the evidence I needed to see how bad this whole thing was. It's easy to be in denial about something like whatever this was, until it really seems to affect you. When I got back to my house, I noticed something. My car was gone. Well, almost. You could still see the top poking out from overgrowth and loose soil. And not just my car. All of them. Bigger vehicles were still in sight, only partially obscured, but they were going down too. A few days later, my whole bottom floor was subterranean. I had managed to block the window and door from bursting in from all the dirt and soil, but it was just a cell now, a mausoleum, not somewhere I wanted to be. I spent most of my time by an upstairs window, just staring at the hostile world outside. My neighbor died yesterday. He fell off his roof and was swallowed by the earth. He's not the first person to do that either. What made it noticeable was why he fell. He was just trying to stop his dog from getting out. The dog's fine. Well, I assume so. It just ran off. They're not affected, the animals. This is our fate. That nihilistic little discovery was just too much for me to bear. This whole thing, a living nightmare. I hit the bottle hard and passed out for the night. When I woke up, my head pounded in the darkness. I flicked on the light switches, but the power was out. I took the flashlight by the fuse box and looked around the house for any supplies. While checking the upstairs, I saw it. The last glimpse of natural light we'll ever see. I had been thinking it was just night, that I had slept all day in an alcohol coma.
By the time I could cross the room to the window, it was gone. I was underground. I tried to get out, smashing through the plaster and tiles, to be greeted with a scream of soil pouring out from where the sky should be. I don't know how much longer I've got in here, in my house-sized coffin. There's only so much food and so much air. I've got a little bit of light, a couple of candles, and a book of matches. The flashlight died some time ago, but this is our fate, man's fate, our return to the earth. When I saw the warnings on the TV, I instantly locked my door and barricaded it with the dining room table. I could hear people from other apartments doing the same. I ran to the windows and shut them. Nothing was getting in on my watch. My daughter walked out of her room, sleepily rubbing her eyes. "What are you doing, Daddy?" She looked so innocent in her little pink pajamas. My heart swelled. I swept her up in my arms and kissed her forehead. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Papa is going to make it okay." The TV was still on. A man with shaking hands read a teleprompter.
"Lock your doors and windows. They can get in from any opening. Don't open the door for any reason. They will lie to you, but don't believe them. The National Guard recommends earplugs."
My daughter clutched my arm tighter. Her long blonde hair got in my mouth. I wiped it away and kissed her again. "Go back to sleep, Ava," I told her softly. She looked up at me with her big blue eyes. "I'm too scared to, Daddy." "Okay, but you're going to listen to headphones, all right? You don't need to hear the TV." I grabbed my iPad and loaded up a kids' show. Ava settled down across the room with the headphones in. My eyes were glued to the television. The man was sweating now.
"Authorities say they are targeting anyone within a 50-mile radius of the crash site. We are unclear exactly what they are. It is not an animal previously seen. It may have come from whatever caused the crash. It looks like a human."
"What is water made out of?" I turned my head and saw Ava with her headphones half off. I struggled to reply. "What do you mean, sweetie?" She pulled on her long blonde hair. "Water? What is it made of?" "It's made of water. Just water." I tried to turn back to the TV, but Ava started crawling to me, her small body gliding along the hardwood floor. "No, there are smaller things inside. Molecules." "You mean molecules?" She crawled into my lap. She stroked my cheek with her pale hand. I felt odd. With a scared voice, I responded, "Hydrogen and oxygen. Did you hear about them on your show?" "Yes, Daddy," she said slowly. "But you're wrong. There are 2 hydrogens. 2. She held up 2 fingers against my arm. My eyes drifted back to the TV. The man and woman were less anxious now. The man said, "Authorities are saying they will appear just like human beings. You may even believe you know them." The woman laughed. "No, they will not appear like that. Nothing like that.
Don't you remember, dear?"
He looked at her, smiling.
"You're right, dear."
I looked down at my daughter. Her white skin was bright against my dark skin. The contrast was blinding. Why did my daughter have white skin? Why did her hair keep getting in my mouth? Her blonde hair. Terrified, I grabbed her tiny body and tossed her across the room into the wall. I heard a crack. Her shoulder popped and her elbow was bent the wrong way. A bone spurted out of her chest. She let out a small cry. In the darkness, I realized her skin was not white. It was caramel. It must have been the light of the TV that made her look white. Someone knocked on the door. Her voice was sweet.
"Dear, I'm home. For some reason, my key won't work."
I stood, backing up. Ava was bleeding onto the wood floor. She had stopped crying. The thing outside knocked again.
"Open up, dear."
The knock got louder.
"Open the door, dear."
Ava stopped breathing. I held my breath. I could hear other apartment doors opening. Screams followed. The man on the TV was half eaten by his co-host. Ava's show was still on, displaying a periodic table. A fish danced the tango with 2 hydrogens and an oxygen.